What's up, everyone? And my name is Jesse, and welcome to VGM Vibes 7, a themed episode on spooky songs in video games. This is my biggest project, I think, maybe ever that I've done on YouTube. I don't know, this is very ambitious. A lot of work went into it, a lot of songs. I got like something like 30 songs this time. So if you're new, basically, obviously this is different from my React series where I never heard those songs. The VGM Vibe series came from the initial idea was to revisit songs that I know, and then it turned into a community thing where people started voting and stuff. And this has a lot of community stuff, which, by the way, I just have to say that thank you for all the suggestions. There was like over 120 official suggestions, and then that had to get narrowed down to votes. And even then, I couldn't do all those votes. You know, it's a lot. But I digress. In this episode, we're going to have everything from spooky to whimsical to horror to pretty much all sides. Spooky, different years, different consoles, all that good stuff. And maybe even a world premiere of some kind at the very end. One more thing I want to mention in this episode, which I think is very important, is I want to be true to myself here. In past episodes, I would, learn about songs that I didn't know about and like look up context and try to get as much information as I can. I didn't think that was fair because I obviously haven't played them, and all I can do is just kind of get a somewhat of idea of it. So I'm going to keep this episode pretty brief. If I've never played the game, I'm just going to be honest, I never played it, and I don't really want to spoil myself on some stuff. So I think that's pretty fair. I think I'd rather just have other people talk about it that know better, or if I know the game, I know the game. If I don't, I'll just talk about what the song did to me, and I may not know what's going on, but just wanted to put that out there. I want to be very transparent that there's a lot of games I don't know what's going on, but I do think that the vibe of the song fits the theme. Enough yapping. Let's get into this episode of VGM Vibe 7 with the first entry now. A better way to start the VGM Vibes spooky episode than with a song called Spooky. This is, I believe, the final boss of Pac-Man World 2, and that is the name of the boss, Spooky. I'm going to keep this one brief. When I first heard the song, I really like just how much attention to this kind of Halloween sound that it has. You're going to hear this sound here and there throughout this episode. I don't want to spoil it, but, it has that flavor, it's got like the grandiose kind of spooky parade type of feel to it. And it's composed by David Logan, who I've never heard about, but it's kind of cool every now and then to hear about composers that I just haven't seen at all. Like, there's so many, but seeing new names is always exciting. And the only thing I wrote for this is that it reminds me of like a Halloween themed like roller coaster or ride or attraction, that kind of thing. And yeah, it's cool to have Pac-Man, because honestly, like when I think Pac-Man, I just think of the little do. So I have missed the entire ball with like the 3D games and stuff. So it's nice to see Pac-Man still making music, even though this is from 2002. But it's nice that the icon of this character is still alive and well. Up next, we have a game called Wolverine Adamantium Rage, and this one's kind of weird. I can talk about this one a little bit because I can't believe I'm even talking about this game, but if I'm being honest, I don't even like this game. I kind of hated it, actually. It controlled horribly, the physics were terrible, and what's weird about this game upon doing some research is that it lives in two separate entities on the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis, and they're totally, completely different games with the exact same name. They came out at the same time, same name, different consoles, different composers for each one. And apparently the SNES one is just a lot better, the way it runs, and even the story's different. So weird, right? Anyways, this game, I don't remember if I owned it or rented it, I don't remember, but damn, it was just so bad. And I'd never talk badly about games, but by default, there's gotta be some stinkers, and this one was bad. Anyways, the soundtrack though, I have to say, the song I chose is the last level in the game, level 7, the Hudsons. And it is kind of spooky, right? It's got this sort of like New York subway thing looking, but then you go into the sewers and everything is this green slime and everything looks vampiric. It definitely is spooky. But the music of this game, honestly, has a very distinct sound to it that has stuck with me my entire life. To the point where it's just like really gritty, distorted keyboards. Like the whole soundtrack, which isn't very big at all. It's like maybe, I don't even know, maybe 10 songs. They all have this feel of just grind and industrial madness. And even though I chose the Hudsons as the song here, I wanted to give a shout out to the main theme, which I'll play in just a second. But do you guys recall that on the Sega Genesis, every now and then, as soon as you start the console, you would get that Sega screen, the blue letters, and then sometimes a developer would put like their own flair there. Most notably Sonic with the Sega. Earthworm Jim had one. There's a bunch. But this game, as soon as the game starts, you get the jump scare of the soundtrack, which I'll just play right now. Yeah, it's pretty intense. And just one more thing, like the story just made no sense. I don't know if it's related to any show or comic, but you're Wolverine, you know. So you'd think you'd be all like slashing and getting all these famous characters. No, it's a bunch of like side characters. The whole plot is you're trying to save a little girl and you're timed. It's weird. I don't know. But damn, soundtrack is amazing and it is extremely spooky. So totally fitting, and actually one of the first things I thought of when I was doing this episode, believe it or not. A game I dislike, Wolverine Adamantium Rage. Up next we have a game I've never played called Sea of Stars, and even though I've never played it, I can almost guarantee you I like it way more than the last game. Probably by like 10 times, because I've seen some footage here and I've heard the soundtrack, and this game looks like a ripping good time. I know Yasunori Masuda is included in it as a guest, but this is composed by Eric W. Brown, and I reacted to this song, The Storm Calls for You, not too long ago, and I remember it gave me this sort of Halloween feel, and although I didn't want to spoil myself, I did see a little bit of the footage, which you're probably looking at right now, and that is, I guess, a boss called Stormcaller. And from what I gathered in that, 10 seconds of footage that I got, is that he seems to control the weather and all that. So I'm not sure if it's really spooky vibes as far as a character. Not that I saw. But one thing I really liked is kind of like a nice JRPG trope, is he's saying the speech before he fights you. And then he says the name of the song right before the music starts. So as soon as the speech is over, song kicks in, and I really like that. But this game looks great. I've heard a lot of good things. It's something that's possibly on my radar. I've gone into JRPGs in the past couple of years, and this looks like it's right up there. So maybe one day I'll check out Sea of Stars. But yeah, the thing that I want to take away from this song is the accordions. Accordions really have always sounded spooky and Halloween to me, and there's not a lot of songs that feature it, especially in video games. So the accordions here did an amazing job at portraying that kind of feel, and Eric Brown definitely did a fantastic job. So that is my pick, Sea of Stars, The Storm Calls for You.
So, you like Castlevania, don't you?
What's up, everyone? Tarvold here to gush about some video game music with you in this, the best of seasons, Spooktoberfest. When Jesse first reached out to me about finding my favorite track with spooky vibes, I was hit with a soul-crushing decision. I immediately knew it had to be from Castlevania, one of my favorite series of all time. A series that has long been about the music. Just look at the series titles for proof of that. Aria, Symphony, Rondo, they knew what they were about. But choosing my favorite song quickly became an endeavor. I toiled. I listened to soundtracks, remixes, covers, medleys. What do I choose? Which song best represents the series? What song do I love the most? What is a man? Then I realized, a man is a product of his lineage, a culmination of his bloodline. And there's no bloodline more divine than the Belmonts. And my favorite Belmont of all time has got to be Richter. Introduced in Rondo of Blood on the PC Engine, Richter's theme comes blasting into your ear holes the second the intro cutscene starts. Bloodlines is the title of the track, and I think this song has resonated with me the most through all of my years of slaying Dracula's minions. We see Richter slam his hand down on a map of Castlevania as shots of hideous beasts terrorizing a local town fill the screen in glorious 1993 manga-style panels. You gain control of Richter as he's riding in on a horse-drawn carriage with no music. Only the sounds of the thunderstorm and the cackles of the Reaper can be heard. After a quick dance with death, you arrive to see a city engulfed in flames, and one of the best tracks in Castlevania history starts playing. I think I love this theme so much because it's not what you'd expect booting up a game that's all about fighting man's most feared nightmare creatures. In fact, I don't think this theme is meant to represent them at all. This is your theme. You are Richter Belmont, and in this first level, you are the final boss that is to be feared by them. It has such an energetic, uplifting, heroic energy that fills you with so much determination. It represents your family, your humanity, and your stalwart resilience in the face of overwhelming terror. It fills you with such a powerful and uplifting confidence that you can and will defeat Dracula and protect the ones you love. And like, come on, those drums! Oh! This track has been reused throughout the years, and every time it's a delight to hear. I won't get into them all, but two in particular I popped off so hard when I heard them for the first time. When Simon was revealed to be in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, I was so happy. But admittedly, I was a little disappointed that it was Simon and not Richter. But then, as if Sakurai heard my internal pleas, halfway through the trailer, Richter appears and drops his infamous line, "Begone! You don't belong in this world, monster!" And the most incredible remix of Bloodline starts blasting. I'll never forget seeing that for the first time, man. My goosebumps had goosebumps. The Smash remix is incredible, and it takes an already powerful melody from the original and injects some adrenaline and intensity that you would expect from a fighting game anthem. Oh, and did I mention the drums? I was a very, very happy boy that day. And then finally, in 2023, Netflix released Castlevania Nocturne, which was an animated series loosely based on the story from Rondo of Blood. Without spoiling anything too much, at one of the most critical moments for Richter, when he is at his absolute lowest, his true inner power is awakened. And after the smoke all clears, you can hear just those 5 distinct drum hits. Boom, 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 boom. And it was at that moment that I leaned forward intensely, because I knew exactly what was happening. As vampires start attacking Richter, an unbelievably epic version of Bloodline starts intensifying as the electric guitar and the drums and the friggin' choir chime together in this grand display of raw emotion and power. A melody now 30 years old, coming back to send shivers up my spine once again. It is by far the most powerful version of this track. It just goes to show you how good video game music is. It's so good, and I'm so thankful that Jesse asked me to do this. VGM is a treat that we're all so lucky to have, and I'll always take any opportunity I can to gush about it. Thanks again, my dude, and keep up the amazing work. Anyway, I was gonna say something witty and cutting and brutal before I finish this off, but f*** it.
Up next, we have a song called Gothic Necklord from Suikoden 2, a song I recently just reacted to. It's still fresh in my memory, and I didn't even write any notes on this one. I kept this one brief, but it left a pretty big impression on me. And I wanted to point out that this is one of the ones that got suggested and got a little bit of votes, but did not win or even get top 5 of the votes. But I was still curious on it because I hadn't heard Suikoden in 2 years, over 2 years. So I wanted to hear it again, and man, I'm so glad I did, because a little bit of spoilers, I guess. So this is actually, I'm not entirely sure if it's the final boss, but it seems to be way towards the end, and you're basically fighting Dracula from what it seems like. And man, the whole song just screams Dracula to the fullest. We just heard Castlevania earlier, but now it's like this is just like it could just fit straight up in there. It's got the pedal tone, of course, with the organ, and there's just so much organ going on. I love the organ. It has that just vampiric sound. It sounds like something that, if you're familiar with Motoi Sakuraba, so like something out of Star Ocean or Batten Kaitos, just that kind of prog sound, and then that intro, which is very, like, kind of reminds you of the Mortal Kombat movie theme. The whole thing just has this very energetic, pulsating feel. And one thing I need to mention is, well, two things I need to mention because I just remembered. The game looks fantastic. The game looks like something that's very, very interesting. And apparently, according to the comments, is that people consider Suikoden is one of like the best JRPGs of the 90s. And the thing I was going to say is that I realized this was in 1998, which, dude, that might have been like arguably like the best year in video game history. Like I've never really thought about it, but there's so many games, especially here on this list, that are from 1998 that are considered like classic stuff. So I don't know, but I don't know what happened in 98, but jeez, dude. Anyways, that is Suikoden Gothic Necklord.
So, you like Suikoden?
Up next, we have one of my favorite games in recent history and now of all time. This is A Hat in Time, and this is Oh, It's You. And man, I have to be honest, it was very hard to decide which song I wanted to feature from here because there's a lot of things that could have been considered as spooky. I considered She Came From Outer Space, which is a really good song that has this it kind of sounds like the Home Depot song, but as a spooky song, and it's just really, really, really good. Then there's like all the songs that are relating to Vanessa and the manor and all that stuff and the Subcon Forest. But ultimately, I went with one of the songs that directly correlate to Snatcher, one of my favorite characters in recent memory. He's so funny. He's so full of character. His voice lines are all fantastic. And even this song is titled based on a event that's happening. And it just describes his character so well. This game, I don't want to gush about it too much, but it's become one of those games where I feel like every one of you that are watching, you all have your one game or two that you always recommend to people. You're like, it's just your thing. Like, this is the one you have to play. I always recommend A Hat in Time. It's just such a... I played it maybe a year or two ago, and I found it here on the channel based on its music, and it just was such a fun time. It's such a video game. I constantly was just like, ooh, that's cool. Yes, I can collect that and do that. I know. And then the music to go along with it, the soundtrack is so massive. There's like a sound or a song for every occasion, and there's remixes everywhere. So cool. But anyways, yeah, dude, the spooky thing really lives on in A Hat in Time. Not the whole game, but there's a specific world, and that world is pretty spooky, and a lot of it involves Snatcher, and some of the best music in the game involves Snatcher, in my opinion. But man, it was hard to choose between the Vanessa stuff and She Came From Outer Space. But Oh, It's You, I mean, it just has this like swing to it. You know, I feel like if you hear the song once, it'll get stuck in your head forever. And it's just one of those songs that I feel like maybe a lot of YouTubers would use as background music or something. It's just one of those iconic, spooky songs that you just need to have on your Halloween playlist. But speaking of iconic, I think we have to move on to another iconic mascot style character in the form of Sega. Up next, we have the first and only song I've ever heard from Sonic Heroes. We have two songs, actually, Hang Castle and Mystic Mansion, which I'm told are pretty much the same area, which I formerly known as zones, but I guess they're not zones anymore. Showing my age here. A game I didn't play, so it's all new to me, but from what I've gathered, it's a kind of, castle section, and the songs definitely hint at the spooky thing. I didn't watch too much footage of it, but I did notice that during Hang Castle, you're definitely getting a 2-for-1 deal with the songs, which is really, really cool. And from what I noticed, you kind of enter this place, and then you hit this orb thing, and then the whole area, the whole level turns upside down, and you get this other song, which I love that kind of attention to detail when it comes to soundtracks. And of course, when you go back, it just flips back to what it is. And then right after that, we have Mystic Mansion, and this song was a completely different vibe, which I love because it still sounds very spooky. And this one reminded me of a game that I featured in the last episode with the snow vibes, and that was Sonic Unleashed, which also has a similar, I guess, kind of thing where it's like it was like a day and night cycle, but in that game you turn into a werehog. And in Mystic Mansion, the song just takes a total different chill turn. I feel like as a guitar player, I was really vibing with it because it goes into this kind of metal thing, but also into a slight reggae kind of thing with the wah pedal, wah, 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 wah. And then I noticed the bells at the beginning. I don't know if they're supposed to be bells or if it's supposed to like sound like the doorbells of you entering the door, but I did notice that too. Anyways, Sonic Heroes was one of the songs that got suggested, but I skipped the voting phase because I knew people were constantly asking for it, so I just threw this one in there as a bonus. But as I've said before, Sonic is probably going to be featured into a lot of these episodes because the music is everywhere. Composers are everywhere. Sonic has done everything, and I'm pretty sure he's the reigning king of the Vibe series. Which, speaking of composers, for Hang Castle we have Tomoyo Otani, the legend, and for Mystic Mansion we have Jun and Naofumi Hataya. So we got everybody in just one game. So I need to hear more from Sonic Heroes. Is the only thing I've ever heard, but it's been a good time, and I had no doubt Sonic was somehow going to make it into this episode. You probably heard him in the intro too. Oops. Mad Monster Mashin from Banjo-Kazooie was the first time I heard Grant Kirkhope, my introduction to this composer, who apparently has quite the legacy behind him. The first time that I heard him, this song, I've kind of retained that energy every time I've heard some of his music, and I just can't help but think of how well he paints pictures with the way he writes in such a memorable way that I've even called him like the Bob Ross of composers, which I personally think is a high compliment. But the way he utilizes sound effects, I feel like he uses sound effects more than any composer that I can think of at the moment. I never even thought about that until just right now, but that might be a possibility. You know, there's just so many attention to little things, little knickknacks, I don't know, it feels like his songs are a game itself, you know, how it has like Easter eggs and little corners with hidden chests and stuff. That's what his music sounds like, you know. It sounds like sound effects with the backing track behind it, I guess is the only way I can put it. And immediately, the first couple notes of the song, you're just quickly brought into this world of spooky, the organ, you got the frogs and the wolves howling, it sounds like nighttime. This is one where I actually did not see footage, so this is one that just, I know it sounds wild if you skip through the intro, but I pretty much said, you know, I didn't want to constantly see what's going on, although I probably have footage here that's probably playing, but I myself didn't, you know, immerse myself into the Mad Monster Mansion, but it was one of those songs where it was so clear as day going to be in this video. When I first heard it, you know, I knew that I had it like in my back pocket as a song that I would revisit at some point, talking about Halloween or something. I didn't know the VGM Vibes was going to be a thing at that time, but anyways, the purpose here is just Grant Kirkhope, his ability to capture a spooky thing more than anyone else, and the utilization of sound effects is just so cool, and it's all over the song. So of course this is going to be in here, and what better way to follow up Grant Kirkhope than with the next song. The next song on my list is Donkey Kong 64, and yet another Grant Kirkhope, back to back. This was apparently after Banjo-Kazooie, I think maybe a year or two. This song is completely still very new to me, so excuse me on that. I had to look up whatever I could. Got a couple of ideas from the comments. This song I've heard for the first time maybe like 2 days ago, but in that time, very similar to Mad Monster Mansion. Again, we have this use of sound effects. We got the winding up toy. Everything is like setting you up for this creepy boss that's coming later, which apparently, according to the comments, was a very difficult boss to the point where some people like left that game for years and came back later. I have footage of the boss and I've seen it a little bit, but I guess I won't know until I play how difficult they were. And yeah, so Frantic Factory is this whole factory thing. We got toys everywhere, and that whole creepy thing is going on. And then we have Creepy Castle, which is a little bit of diversion. It's actually more on the song side than the sound effect thing. Although I did like the inclusion of the snaps, which reminded me of the Addams Family. And one thing that I was hoping for to feature in this episode was the use of the harpsichord, and the song is drenched in it, so it's got that really springy sound. I don't even know how to describe a harpsichord, to be honest, but once you've heard it, you know what it sounds like. And yeah, it just totally does the creepy thing well. It's got a hint of ambience, but it's definitely hinting at this, very similar to Banjo-Kazooie, just it's hinting at this, ooh, you don't want to be here, da 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 da, like step away, you know, that kind of thing. So these 4 songs with Grant Kirkhope, I think, really are just something else, and I think he's one of the best composers you can feature in a video like this, and I can't wait to hear more from him and to see what other areas he goes to. So I'm really mostly familiar with the creepy stuff he's done, so I'm excited for that. But we must move on to the next one. Up next, we have a game that I'm very familiar with, and that is Mortal Kombat 3, of course, composed by Dan Forden. I couldn't choose between 2 songs, so I chose both of them. But the first one that came to mind was The Temple, otherwise known as the Church, but it is the Temple, and that is a standout stage to me, where you got the stained glass. This whole thing has a very gothic feel to it, and it's one of the rare times in a fighting game, maybe even the only time in Mortal Kombat, I can't remember, where there's foreground stuff. So you can see these candle holders that kind of get in your way, and I can see why they never brought it back, is because they kind of interfere with what's going on. But it's just another little thing that has always stuck with me, is seeing those candles. But this song, I believe, I'm pretty sure, is the first time I heard organs in my life. I don't know what's making me think that, but I think so, because when this came out and when I played it, I was at that age where it's very possible that, you know, I was like, what is this sound? And I think that's why it stood out to me, hearing a little do, you know. So I may not be 100% on that, but I think just the fact that I heard organs that young probably developed my my love for them. And the song is super creepy with the choir and everything. But there's another song that I wanted to feature here, is because it's Mortal Kombat, so it's obviously already kind of, well, not spooky, but, you know, it's dark, to put it lightly. There's a lot of blood, a lot of fatalities and all that. But the Graveyard, which is a very interesting stage, it's just cemetery, a lot of Easter eggs on the tombstones, just the developers' names. I thought that was kind of funny. But the whole place is just very, you know, it just has that vibe. It's got the moonlight, the clouds, and it's at night, all that stuff. But the music in the Graveyard is very cool. It sounds like something closer to Castlevania. It's got a little bit of a hip-hop beat. The bass is unforgettable. And the only reason I didn't consider it like higher is just as great of a song as it is, and as great as a melody as it is, it's a little repetitive, and it doesn't really do much compared to the Temple. To me, the Temple is iconic, as in the entire series of MK. Iconic. This is, to me, where, like, this era of MK was, to me, the strongest the music was. And I'll die on that hill. It's something that I've been very, like, vocal about in the past. The games, as much as I've always admired them, the first 3 game soundtracks were something else, man. They were on a different planet. And then 4 onwards, it got a little and then the 3D era got okay. It started to become about, like, select songs that were cool, and then now the music is just not even there. But that's a whole other topic. But for me, MK3 and lower is like peak Mortal Kombat music. And there's so many songs here that I could have chosen, but the Temple was definitely one that immediately caught my attention.
You like fighting games, don't you?
Hey there, I'm Adam Hart, lead combat designer from the Killer Instinct team at Iron Galaxy. Misako was the 3rd completely original character Iron Galaxy added to the Killer Instinct universe. When we were planning Season 2's roster, a few of the new character slots were only defined by vague ideas. The team at Xbox knew that they really wanted something mummy-like and a creepy ghost girl, and with that last slot, the team at IG really wanted to do a big body armored character. During that phase of development, We'd often get story beats and concept artwork finished and delivered before the gameplay team could even start planning a moveset. When Hisako was presented to us, while we were in the process of building Aganos, we were immediately inspired by the idea of turning the concept of a jump scare into a fighting game character. We drew heavy inspiration from one of the most frightening forward dashes of all time in Makoto from Third Strike. We wanted a comically slow and menacing character who could have sudden bursts of shocking speed, causing you to leap out of your seat in fright. After all of that started to come together, with her gameplay design, animation, and VFX, the audio team got a hold of her and took her to the next level. And the finishing touch was her stage and her music track, Village of Whispers. As I'm sure you'll agree, finding a balance between writing a track that can juggle both being upbeat enough for a Killer Instinct battle, but also unsettling enough to tell the story of Hisako would be quite a challenge. Fortunately, Mick Gordon, our composer on Season 2, was up to the task. Hisako has become one of Killer Instinct franchise's most popular characters, hanging out with the likes of Jago and Fulgore as one of the game's most iconic fighters. If you've never played Killer Instinct, be sure to give Hisako a try when you do. Before I go, I want to thank Jesse for all of his help over the years, getting me over a few of my hurdles while improving my skill at the guitar. This guitar right here, this one, he in fact helped me choose during the pandemic when I was searching for a new one online. So thank Jesse for everything that you've helped me with over the years, and good luck with this video.
Up next, we have another game I've never played. This is Super Metroid Meridia, the Swampy Caverns, otherwise known as the Rocky Underwater Area, composed by Minako Himano. 1994. Damn. So I know this game has a huge following, a huge, iconic status, so I'm going to be very transparent. I don't know anything about this game. I know it's responsible for being half of a popular genre of Metroidvanias, and I know it's like a big thing. I know there's Samus, but I just never experienced one yet. So while I'll keep this one brief, I will say this. The music that I've heard from Metroid, I think a lot of it can fall under this creepy, spooky vibe. I just thought it was a side scroller and you're just kind of shooting your way through everything. And while that may be the case on paper, the soundtrack, like the tiny amount of stuff I've heard, has all been pretty creepy. And so are the levels. Everything has this kind of survival, horror, dark atmosphere about it that I wasn't expecting, I saw this and I thought it was going to be futuristic and kind of, that kind of thing. But I'm not sure when it takes place, but, I was just expecting more, buildings and lights and stuff, not caves and really monstrous looking areas. And that's the only way I can describe it. But the music, of course, fits that whole thing to a T. It's very atmospheric, yet super, super haunting. So I think that's another reason. I'm just assuming that this game and the series has stuck with people, because not only are they fun and what have you, but the impression that they left of this sort of uneasy feeling. If I had to guess, that had to be one of the biggest reasons. And yeah. It's something that caught my attention when it was voted for. I was like, Super Metroid, really? But it made sense when I started hearing this. And then I heard the other song that I checked out a while ago from Prime, and even that one sounded creepy. So yeah, it's odd. But Super Metroid. One day, hopefully I'll get to find out more about the series, but Meridia is definitely one of those ones that catches your attention in a really creepy way.
Hi, this is Tabitha Sabbatha, and my submission for favorite spooky tune from a video game is from one of my favorite games growing up, Luigi's Mansion. It has a lot of classic elements that a spooky tune would have, such as the organ, the theremin. It's extremely catchy. It goes really well with the game. It plays throughout the game. And what helps make it even more catchy is that Luigi himself is constantly humming the tune. He whistles the tune throughout the game, and that tune basically lives rent-free in my head. I often find myself humming it or whistling it when I'm doing day-to-day chores, and it just really sticks out as a really great tune. So give it a listen, and I hope you enjoy it.
Hey, I'm Lynn, also known as XGremlinX over on Twitch, where I usually do first playthroughs of JRPGs, but I'm also a huge fan of horror and visual novels, so I'm really excited to be able to talk to you about Doki Doki Literature Club. This is a visual novel that subverts the well-established dating sim tropes popular amongst the medium and breaks the fourth wall and maybe even your heart. This game is such an experience that it exploded on the internet and quickly became a part of today's pop culture. Looking at it, you may think it's going to be a cute romp where you'll pick your favorite waifu to romance through the art of poetry, but how wrong you would be. But I don't want to give too much away. This game serves its purpose best going in completely blind. So let's talk about Sayonara, arguably the most important track in the very short OST. When this song creeps into your ears during a time when you'll realize exactly what you've gotten yourself into, the motif of your reality plays hauntingly in the background while you contemplate your life decisions that brought you to this moment. It evokes grief, guilt, anger, sadness, and leaves you feeling anxious for what's to come. This is the pivotal moment when the game becomes honest with you and reintroduces you to the roller coaster that is Doki Doki Literature Club. Each character has an instrument that they are known to play, and if you know, well then, you know why this song has such an impact. If you somehow haven't played this game, I implore you to check it out during spooky season. I promise you will not be disappointed. But if you have already played this game and you're looking for something similar, well, I can help you there. You and Me and Her, A Love Story is simply Doki Doki Literature Club's idea, but done better. This actually came out before Doki Doki Literature Club, but I think this one is more horrifying. And it has some really interesting things going on with it. If you can buy a physical copy from Jast, USA, I highly recommend. It just makes the experience better. But yeah, I hope you all enjoy your spooky season.
Chasing a Dream from Rayman Origins, from Land of the Livid Dead. Correct myself there because when I reacted to it I kept saying Living Dead, but Land of the Livid Dead. I just want to preface this, I do not play this game and I've never played it. I've only heard 2 songs from Rayman ever, and this is one of them. When I heard Rayman for the first time, it was 2 different games. It was this one and another one, and that left such an impression on me. I was like, wow, this music is amazing. And then I saw footage of it and I said, wow, it's amazing again. It reminded me of a game that I grew up with that I admired called Earthworm Jim. That kind of wacky, cartoony thing, but also the platforming looked really intense. It looked like a really fun game. Anyways, Chasing a Dream from Land of the Living Dead is so cool to me for so many reasons. First of all, the aesthetic of the whole level, the side-scroller thing. It's obviously you're being chased, so the music is kind of, picking up, but the music is perfect because it has this sort of hybrid of a couple things. Like we got like flamenco, mariachi, surf, all that kind of style, while the whole aesthetic of the level is obviously spooky themed, but also has a very Day of the Dead kind of look. A lot of sugar skulls, the calaveras, and which is very fitting. Day of the Dead. Dia de los Muertos is like the Mexican equivalent to Halloween, where they honor the dead, and there's just a lot of that. There's just everything, just the whole place, and then the music is so, it's just so much character, right? The surf riffs, and then you got the little da 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 da. So this is its own kind of spooky, which I really, really admire, and it's this kind of spooky where it's like almost menacing. It's lighthearted. But if you were to hear it in a certain context or a certain feel, this music would be very, very scary, because it's because of its upbeat, way of approaching it. It's amazing. I've never heard of Christoph Hurral, but I want to hear more. I want to hear more Rayman, and I just was really interested in it as soon as I heard it. And the other song too, which I can't remember, but I only did one video for Rayman, and you'll see it in there. Chasing a Dream was super awesome and immediately stuck with me, and hopefully one day I get to check it out. The first time on the VGM Vibe series, we feature Undertale. I'm not gonna lie, this is gonna be the shortest entry here, and I'll tell you why. This is Here We Are, but I will say that I heard it with a song called Alphys, which apparently are very closely connected. And I just want to say that the reason it's going to be short is because, like I said in the intro, I don't want to spoil myself. And I thought to myself, I've heard so many comments for the past 3 years of doing this. Don't look up anything of Undertale. Don't look up anything of Undertale. Just play it, blah, 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 this, that. So I took that to heart. So when I recorded this, you can see that the only thing I remember is just this girl walking up like this hallway, and then I saw some urinals, and that's it. That's all I can recall from that whole section. And so one day I'll have this. I own this game. It's just sitting in my Steam library, but yeah, I don't want to look up anything. But the song, I will say, was voted for quite a bit. I'm guessing obviously for context reasons, which I don't know. But at least the song has, well, apparently I should say that Here We Are has a motif from Alphys, which I didn't catch the first time, but I did now. But the song itself is something really, really cool because it's this sort of like chiptune version of hip hop, and I kind of gushed about it in my reaction. I also heard this very, very recently, so it's still new. But that's it. I definitely feel the spooky kind of haunting vibes in this one, but I just have to say that I really love the whole beat aspect of it, and there's just not enough of that in video games. So Undertale, you know, it's cool to feature here. Toby Fox is a genius, and hopefully I can feature them more one day, and hopefully I get to play this game one day. But that is Here We Are. Up next, we're featuring a game called Diablo 2, and the song is called Tristram, a game that I've heard about my entire life. But I'm sorry, Diablo players, I've never played it, and I've heard such little music from this game, and I think Tristram was my debut, was the first time I heard Diablo. Which I'm told in the comments that this also existed in the first Diablo. It's like a kind of a callback. I haven't heard that one though. So I know nothing of this game. I don't even know what kind of genre it is. I just know that it's a game that I've seen my entire life as a PC game. And the footage that I'm going to show on the screen is just the first time that I technically have ever really looked at it. And I still have no idea what's going on. But I wanted to obviously mention it because I know it's a big deal. And I wanted to give its flowers. I know this game has had a huge following for a long time. But what I get from this is it's a very special, unique kind of song that I don't really hear in video games. And the first time I heard it left a lasting impression on me, obviously, because I knew this one was going to make it into this episode the first when I was putting the list together. And that's the thing, right? You know, when I first started this series, I really wanted to focus on songs that I knew and that I grew up with, or that I heard on the channel, and I familiarized myself with it. Even though I heard this about 2 years ago, obviously I didn't really familiarize myself with it context-wise, but I've heard it enough. You know, I've added it to my playlist, and you know, I've heard it a lot because it's so unique to me. To me, it's kind of a stringed instruments player paradise. You know, it's filled with arpeggios everywhere, the panning left and right. There's stuff that sounds like a 12-string guitar. There's stuff like a mandolin being strummed really quick. It's like an 8-minute song of just pure ambiance, but there's just heavy reverb and delays everywhere. It has its own kind of creepiness towards it. I don't know if the game is itself creepy. I don't think it is. Maybe. I don't know. It's called Diablo. So. And I don't know what Tristram means either. So please feel free to elaborate, just like you guys did 2 years ago. But, you know, like I said, I kind of wanted to, because I never know what I'm going to play or what I'm not going to play. So I see it as, instead of me getting some information and seeing a screenshot or seeing some footage, like, yeah, that'll be cool and I'll get some context, but it's really not doing the game any justice. So I can't guarantee I'm going to play everything that comes my way, but Diablo, who knows? You know, maybe one day I want to play Diablo and I want to find out. But in the meantime, I am safe with saying that this is definitely one of the creepiest sounding songs I've ever heard, especially in a video game. Up next, we have The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, and yet again, Koji Kondo makes an appearance on VGM Vibes. This is the Shadow Temple, but also plays in the Kakariko Village well, apparently. Another song I've very recently just heard, and man, I must say, it left a little bit of an impression on me, because I was not expecting this for having as many votes as it did. This is my most voted for song in my Patreon. So I was curious. I'm like, what is this? You know, what is this going to consist of? As is it just the most voted on? And apparently, that vote went towards a very creepy, atmospheric, haunting thing. And that's what this is. You know, this image isn't there, but the footage I have on screen will be. This song is so unnerving. It's just so unsettling and creepy, and apparently it is hinting with the hand percussion. It's hinting towards the boss later. I didn't see that, but that's pretty cool. And to me, it was such a standout because everything I've ever heard up until this point from The Legend of Zelda, especially Koji Kondo, has been very melody focused. You know, lots of earworms, stuff that you can whistle back for years and years. So this was the first time I can remember where it got really purely atmospheric, and it was great to experience that, because I can imagine you guys playing this as kids and just not wanting to be there, right? So there is a video that I referenced some of this stuff on, and I'll shout them out now. That was a channel called Save Data. They made a whole video on this song alone. I really recommend you check it out. I learned a lot from it. I didn't watch all of it. I watched maybe half, just to kind of, you know, like I said, who knows, maybe one day I'll play Ocarina. You know what I mean? I wanted to keep this whole thing organic, but I will say that this song was definitely a standout in The Legend of Zelda, because I hadn't heard anything like this, and I was not expecting this in the 90s console stuff. I thought the 90s was dominated by these melodic things from Zelda, but apparently they've been doing this for a while. So yeah, really good song, really creepy. And I think there is just one creepier song in The Legend of Zelda, which I heard about 2 years prior. The Legend of Zelda: Majora's Mask. We have Last Day / Final Hours. Now, just like Ocarina of Time, I've never played it, and this is going to be kind of short. I remember this was the first time, the real first time that I experienced any sort of shift in The Legend of Zelda. While Shadow Temple was the first time I heard something atmospheric and sound effect based, that kind of thing, Majora's Mask, when I reacted to this, it felt like the first time that I was listening to a different game. And again, this is one of those instances where I did not look up anything. I was told that this is pretty spoilerish, so I respect my moderators that told me that, and I abided by it. I was like, okay, I won't look it up. But from what I've gathered from comments, and then just the way I experienced this, just to give you an idea, I heard this with a couple of songs called, excuse me, I don't know if it was Clock Town or Clock Tower. I think it was Clock Town. And I heard like a day 1, a day 2, a day 3, and then this one. In game, I still don't know if it plays exactly like that, or if there's multiple areas. Like I said, I never played it. And then you hear Final Hours. Anyways, but hearing the transition go from like the Zelda that I know of music to this foreboding sound of death, you know, I can kind of piece it together just by, you know, what's happening. This it's called Last Day Final Hours, so I'm aware that the game runs on a clock. It was heavily advertised as this kind of timed thing. I don't know what happens at the end of this clock, but I can only imagine. And yeah, dude, this reminds me so much of a very unsettling style of music that I can best compare it to a movie called A Clockwork Orange. If you've ever heard of that movie's crazy for many reasons, but the soundtrack, it's kind of got these same keyboards, and it also reminds me of some of the stuff in Scarface, which isn't a horror movie, but also has that kind of menacing thing. So I just love the synthesizers here and this just feeling of dread. Even though I don't know what's going on, but I can kind of guess what's going to happen. The song tells you that. The song tells you that, and I just think it's just slightly more. I mean, I'm not trying to compare to Shadow Temple. That's its own thing. I think they serve two different purposes, because obviously Shadow Temple is a stage and is also used in other areas, but this song is specific to like the entire game's premise. So they're in that regard, they're very different in my eyes. So who knows? I don't know which game to start with. If I ever do play a Zelda, I'm sure the comments are going to go crazy with them. I'm pretty sure this came after Ocarina, so I'd probably play them in that order. But either way, I can't wait to experience myself with this song, because it is menacing as hell.
You enjoy role-playing games.
Listen to the cries of the planet from Final Fantasy VII. Yep. Technically 2 songs, but we'll talk about the other one later. You know, I'm going to be honest with you. I wasn't expecting to put this one in here. I didn't think anything FF7 was going to be in here. It just didn't cross my mind immediately as far as spooky, but I thought about it. I thought about all the games I played, and I always go through a list of things I played, things I've heard, and I thought about it. I'm like, what is creepier and spookier than the most foreboding song in history, probably in video games? And then I thought about it even further, and I remembered that one of my most popular, most viewed clips on this entire channel is me reacting to this song. And I do mean reacting to it, because it was from my playthrough, and I remember stopping in my tracks, just cranked up the volume, and just sat there and just was like, oh my god. And I remember at first being kind of disappointed. I haven't told people this, but I was kind of disappointed that no one requested that song as a reaction video. I was like, what? Because to me, I've already mentioned before in my top 20 FF7 videos, this is my favorite song from the entirety of Final Fantasy VII. It's so good. And if you haven't played FF7 Rebirth, spoilers right now, this song makes a return, and also incredible. And they even made a battle theme out of it. Ugh. Anyways, I don't really want to say too much, because I avoided this spoiler my whole life, so I don't want to spoil it for them if you haven't experienced FF7. But just know that this song does extremely well what it's supposed to do. It sounds amazing. It doesn't sound like anything in the whole soundtrack. I love it. It's perfect. Best song in FF7. Easy. Now, the next song, which, funny enough, was slightly suggested for me to in my fire-themed episode, and that was Those Chosen by the Planet, otherwise known as the Nibelheim incident scene, the iconic fire ablaze. And there was also another song that was suggested called Trail of Blood, which is, Genova and all that. But I think when it comes to, it just happens to work out that two of the most iconic moments in Final Fantasy history are both from this game, and both have these songs attached to them, and both have Planet in the title. But everyone knows the Sephiroth scene, him looking up from the flames. He's gone cuckoo. He's been awakened, and it's scary. It's freaky to see. So both these songs, I think, totally fit the vibe. It's for me, it's exciting because I initially just did not think of them at all, and then as soon as I thought about it more, I'm like, oh yeah, of course, because it's not all about Halloween. This is not a Halloween themed episode at all. It's going to release during Halloween, but this is a spooky thing, right? So scary, all that. So anytime you have anything like this, I think these two songs have to be mentioned. And there's others, like I said. But anyways, I've already talked about these enough in depth in my top 20, but those Chosen by the Planet and Listen to the Cries of the Planet are fantastic examples of what Nobuo Uematsu can do. I don't have to say anything more.
Hi to you all, and thanks to Jesse for inviting me to talk about my favourite medieval track, the one that kind of in some way means the most to me. It's quite hard to pick from all the scores that we've done over the years. In fact, Barn and I are the only two people to have worked on every single version of the game, in fact. And it's been a great honour and something that we're both very proud of. It would probably be remiss of me to not mention this track. One that became known as Galamir Waltz and was on the Galamir Plains level. This track means a lot to me because actually it was my first attempt at writing a game music track, and I was supposed to work on all the other elements of sound at Millennium Interactive, later became Sony Cambridge. And in fact, I was trained in music. I'd always written music, and of course I wanted to have a go at doing something for the game. And the demos until that point had sort of sounded very game-like and, you know, more traditional game, let's say. And Chris had sort of made it clear that Chris Sorrell, that is, had made it clear that he'd like the music to be more in the style of Nightmare Before Christmas, because the whole look of the game was Nightmare Before Christmas. So we had the CD sitting around, so I kind of put it on, had a listen to it, and started to try and work out what I felt made it tick. And for me, you know, I followed what the melody was doing, what was happening harmonically, also if there were any key changes, and also what the instrumentation was doing. And it was a very quick kind of, you know, 20-30 minutes of analysis, but it gave me a bit of an insight into the world of Danny Elfman and how his crazy mind works. So I set about trying to write something, and I thought, you know, our sequencer practically always stayed in 4/4 time, and I thought, why not do something in 3/4? Why not write a waltz? I mean, you know, we hadn't done that before, and there's no rules about whether you can or can't write in 3/4 time. So I thought, hey, what the hell, give it a shot. So I did give it a shot, and I started to come up with this track, and gradually, slowly but surely, this track emerged. And, you know, I was very happy with it at the end. It took me probably 2 days from start to finish, and I was pretty happy with it. Of course, it didn't sound like it sounded in that clip I just played. It was done with very, very early synthesizers and samplers and very early orchestral libraries and so on. So it was the best that we could do at the time. And now, of course, we've had it performed with orchestras, and, you know, it's been an incredible journey. But I played the piece to Chris Sorrell, the game designer and the guy who conceived the game. I'm sure I don't need to tell you all that. And he loved it. And that was my kind of entry into writing music for video games. It started my partnership working with Barn, and from that point we also did Frogger, and then one of our first jobs after we left and went freelance was Primal. And, you know, then we went on for another 24 years doing the same thing. So it's been absolutely wonderful. And for me, it all started with this. So that's why I probably picked this piece over and above the others. So I want to say a big thank you to Jesse for inviting me to do this video, and a massive thank you to all of you for listening to my trip down memory lane, my nostalgic indulgence. And I wish you all a wonderful day, and hope to see you again soon.
So a big thank you to Paul Arnold, otherwise known as Bob in Bob and Barn. I am so honored to have been able to have both featured on the channel, because as well as having Paul describe his favorite song, which I thought was so endearing and I loved it, I also got to interview Andrew Barnabas. I'll put that in the description as well, and that kind of spawned a new series, where I started talking to composers and I got to dive into the mind of one half of Medieval. So really, really cool. Thank you both. I highly admire it. I can't believe I'm even saying that, but thank you to both. And I would like to also mention that at the end of this episode, courtesy of Andrew Barnabas, we get a very bonus, never before heard shop theme from the Gargoyle shop theme, but a jazz version of it that's never been released. So thank you to him. Anyways, my favorite song from Medieval is from Medieval 2. You might have heard it on this channel as background music. That is Kew Gardens. From what I've noticed, I think Kew Gardens is a real place. And the only thing I know about Medieval 2, I don't remember if I played the whole game. I think I rented it. I definitely played the first one and the remastered. I didn't play Resurrection, but Medieval 2, I played briefly somewhere, maybe even a demo. But the only thing I remember is that Dan Fortescue, the character, gets like a girlfriend, and there's like, you can be a hand walking around. And there was something else that the Victorian era. That's what it was too. It was like locations. Anyways, Kew Gardens, the song. I just love this song. I'm going to be honest. Medieval is... I thought about it many ways how this episode's going to go, because towards the end of the episode, I always feature the ones that inspired the whole episode. And there was times where, I'm just being honest, I thought my number one pick would be the entirety of Medieval. Every song, the entire OST. Because to me, every song from Medieval can totally fit the Halloween, spooky, scary thing, all that, you know. If you've heard it, you know. If you played it, you know. It's very heavily inspired from The Nightmare Before Christmas, and just has that Danny Elfman sound, just everything. But Kew Gardens is another one of those. I don't know what it is about the song that I really like, but I can tell you that it has a very simple format that I really enjoy, where of course you have the intro, you get the melody, then it kind of picks up a little bit with some horns, and then the song goes into this kind of apex of its dark, hellish section. And then it goes right back down, and then back down to, so it's like a triangle, but it just sounds so good, and it's so short. And the one thing I remember from this area was the pumpkins, the pumpkin enemies, and yeah. So although it was very hard for me not to put the entirety of Medieval as the main VGM Vibes 7 theme, I'm very glad to feature it, and having been able to speak to Bob and Barn, which is so awesome. So please check out that interview and Composer Chronicles that I'll put in the description below. Lavender Town from Generation 1 Pokemon on the Game Boy, Red, Blue, and Yellow. I owned Yellow and I played the hell out of that. The screenshots from the anime, the Indigo League. And I think a lot of people were expecting the song to be here. There was times where I thought it would be like my number one pick. And I think it's just one of those songs that once you've experienced it, you will associate it forever as this spooky thing. It is a quintessential, at least in my eyes, the kind of scary theme of the Pokemon world. I've only played Gen 1, so I don't know about the future gens. Let me know what else could fit. But I think Lavender Town is by far one of the most iconic And it wasn't until this episode that I learned, or at least I think I know, I don't know, depending on what answers I get here, but I did not know that this song started on the left side speaker only, panned hard left, which gives us this really uncomfortable poking sound, and then the whole thing, you know, comes together in stereo. I played this game on a Game Boy Color out of that one speaker that obviously, you know, it didn't sound like that. I never played with headphones on the Game Boy ever, so I don't know if I did that back then, but it's weird hearing this song that I'm so familiar with sound different years later. But again, didn't know if that's a thing or not, or maybe it's just this upload that I chose, but kind of cool and kind of fitting if that's a thing. But yeah, Lavender Town. Fun fact, lavender is my favorite color. I've like always loved purple, but lavender specifically. So this place has always had a resonance with me. You know, I like spooky things. This place is very haunting. You know, dead Pokemon. We got, every time I think of Lavender Town, I always think of, you know, Ghastly, Haunter, and all that. And it's just an iconic place. You know, even in the anime, it was iconic. I don't remember exactly what happens in the episode. The only thing I recall was like the licking of Ash. But yeah, anyways, Pokemon Lavender Town, of course it was going to be here. One of the most iconic, creepy sounds in video game history. And the sound of it, you know, is what gives it that. I mean, the song itself is genius, but the sound of that chiptune is just so iconic to me. So of course it was going to be here. But before I talk about my most memorable spooky song in video games, I have quite a bit of honorable mentions, so let's just get that over with right now. So we're going to talk about some honorable mentions here. There's so many that I wanted to choose. This list had way more entries than I thought would ever be possible, so none of these are in specific order. They're just ones that I wanted to feature in here somehow, some way. And the first one being from Final Fantasy XIV is Ink Long Dry and Bibliophobia, which is the Great Google Library, and it is Masayoshi Soken and Yukiko Takeda. I remember this song standing out so hard because at that point I thought I've heard just about everything with 14. That's just silly to think about. But this song is so unsettling and weird. It sounds like a broken radio. It sounds like things have been taken over and they're just kind of going on their own. And since it works in two different ways with hard mode and the song kind of cleans itself up, so to say, it's something that I just recommend everyone to hear, and I think it's one of the most standout songs in all of Final Fantasy XIV. Very similar to the aforementioned Final Fantasy XIV song is the Ghost Ship or the Phantom Ship from The Legend of Dragoon, a game that has been featured a couple times on the Vibe series with castle and battle themes, I think. And this is composed by Dennis Martin, who composed half of the soundtrack with Takeo Muratsu, and I also did a whole video, if you're curious, of the whole, pretty much the entire soundtrack, but it's like a text-based video. And in that one, basically, this is like the haunted ghost ship, and the reason it sounds so cool is because it sounds like a piano that's been taken over and is sort of playing itself, you know, that kind of thing. And it's one of the most iconic sections of the entire game, filled with ghosts, spooky sounds, and just, you know, being on a ghost ship. My next honorable mention is the boss theme from Pluck by Tim Fallon and Jeff Fallon, rest in peace. I think this soundtrack is crazy, and I just really wanted to feature some of the Fallon brothers. I remember when I first heard the song, it blew me away. I don't think it has anything to do with spooky. I think it's just a generic boss theme, and the game doesn't even look spooky to me. But the song has just if you hear it, you know, and it has stuck with me. I love this song. It is so bizarre and so ahead of its time that I just had to throw it in here just because I wanted to. My next honorable mention is a game called Hades, a game I played recently, and I love that game from beginning to end, and I discovered it here on the channel with its music. The composer Darren Korb describes the soundtrack as Mediterranean prog rock Halloween, which I think is super fitting. There's so many songs I think could have fit here, but the one that I ultimately chose was the House of Hades, otherwise the place you're kind of home base that you're always in. The song is actually way more dynamic than it initially seems because you're not in here for too long. Usually you're just in here for maybe a minute, just picking up your gear before you take off. But if you listen to the entire song, it has a lot of cool motifs and a lot of haunting things. And as noted throughout the whole soundtrack, there is this theremin sound, which is really just a Casio keyboard, but the whole thing definitely has a very spooky feel to it. And I love everything Darren Korb does. I can't wait to hear more of Hades 2, but of course, Hades is going to make it here too. My last honorable mention for this episode is a game that I'm currently playing right now, and that is Hollow Knight. And the song is called Soul Sanctum from Christopher Larkin. This song, there's a couple I could have chosen. I've heard a handful of songs, but this is one that I just heard not too long ago, but I also just experienced it in game, so it's very fresh in my mind. It's all I know. I haven't completed the game yet, so I'm like 6 days in or something, and I just know Soul Sanctum has this kind of like upper right section of the map. It's this dark blue hue, and some of the worst enemies I've dealt with so far. A very impressive kind of boss. I don't want to spoil it, but the Soul Master was annoying, that I conquered twice. And yeah, just the whole organ sound is just perfect. I love the soundtrack, and I can't wait to hear more of this soundtrack as I play through the game. It's a really fun game. So those are my honorable mentions of this episode. It's been really fun to think about all these songs, and there's so many that I would love to have heard, but ultimately I had to just, cap it somewhere. But before I go to the main song that I'm thinking of, I'm going to try something different and squeeze one more in there, and that is going to be coming up next. Room of Angel from Silent Hill 4, The Room, a game I've never played, but has left a lasting impression on me since the first time I heard it. The song is gorgeous, and I'll never forget it. I still hear it quite often, and even though I have no context, I will do my best to kind of interpret it. Composed by Akira Yamaoka, sang by Mary Elizabeth McGlynn, lyrics by Joe Ramirsa and Hiroyuki Owaku. I've always heard of the Silent Hill series. I just know it's this kind of horror game. Well, I don't want to say I know, but this is how I've always seen it. I've always kind of categorized it in the same group of like a Resident Evil style game where it's maybe jump scary or just maybe, I don't know. I've heard in comment sections that Silent Hill is more atmospheric based horror, not really jump scares. So again, I never played it. I just what I've gathered from it. Either way, the song is clearly the highlight here. The song immediately stuck out to me the first time I heard it. It's extremely simple as far as musical ideas. Just a couple of chords, maybe like 3-4 piano chords, just arpeggiated. And it's just the way it sounds and how simple it is what gives it the delivery that that it requires to send this message. I've read the lyrics, and although I don't know what's happening, I can kind of get an idea of what's going on. It seems kind of spoilerish, and the lyrics are pretty heavy. And that's what gives it this whole kind of haunting feeling. And I have to say that the way Mary Elizabeth McGlynn sings this, her cadence is so well done. Obviously, it sounds really good. This kind of breathy, sort of like almost that. It's almost part of the character. I don't know if it's supposed to be a character singing it or something, but it sounds like she's tired, like she's been through it all, kind of thing. But not only that, is the way she sings the words in between the lines. It has a very poetic feel to it. She'll sometimes sing, 2 words per bar, and then sometimes she'll fit like a whole sentence there. It's really, really well done. And it's to the point where like I really want to know what happens here, because the lyrical content, the way the song sounds, it doesn't look like a game for me. I don't really play horror games, but and I'm not even sure if Silent Hill 4 is considered a good one. I always hear about 2 all the time. Everyone talks about Silent Hill 2. It's just a game I never decided to get into, but I've always heard about it my entire life. So, but yeah, when I was thinking of creepy songs and all that, I immediately thought of this one, and I knew it was going to be in here, and it totally inspired the episode as well. So that's it, Room of Angel. And it's same with the title, what does that mean, Room of Angel? So forgive me for Silent Hill fans, I don't know what's going on, but I really love the song from this game. So Many songs suggested, many voted for. I did not know there was going to be this many for this theming. I just had no idea. So it was really fun to go through all of them. I wish I could listen to all of them. But ultimately, I have to choose one that I have to think about when it comes to spooky vibes. And for me, it was an easy choice. And that's coming up next.
I see that you enjoy Konami games. I can read you like an open book.
Metal Gear Solid Mantis Hymn is to me the spookiest, freakiest, creepiest, most haunting song in video game history. For many reasons, I have so many notes here that I had to be able to keep up because there's so many things I wanted to talk about and I don't want to gush forever. But I will say, normally I don't like to talk spoilers, but in this one I kind of have to. So if you've never played Metal Gear Solid, I highly recommend. It's my favorite game of all time that you do, but I will have to talk about what's going on here. There's no other way around it, so you've been warned. That being said, Psycho Mantis is such an iconic character in such an iconic video game. He can read your mind, and to me there's nothing creepier than breaking the fourth wall. But it's got to be done in a way where it's not cheesy. Although Metal Gear Solid and Hideo Kojima can definitely do cheesy and kind of trolly stuff, this whole encounter with Psycho Mantis is all those things. It's creepy, it's haunting, it's trolly, it's breaking the fourth wall, it's messing with your physical hardware. Let me set the stage the best I can here, if I can remember all of it. It's one of the most iconic fights in the game. It's my favorite part of the game. And if you ever watch people play this on their first playthrough, this is probably one of the most viewed sections because everyone wants to see people's reaction to Psycho Mantis. It's one of those iconic moments in video game history. So let me just kind of paint the picture here. You are walking up this very menacing hallway, hearing this music just playing out of nowhere, which, by the way, he calls his mind control music. So the music you're hearing right now is meant to hypnotize you. Just as an Easter egg here, it's not listed anywhere, you have to find out. This game features a first-person view. The whole game is like sort of bird's eye view, but you can, for a moment, go into a first-person view and like look at your surroundings. Though you cannot move, you can only see. You are with another character, and if you happen to press the first-person view button, in this specific moment only, the camera changes to her perspective looking at you, the character, Snake, which is super freaky. There's no explanation as to why. You don't know what's going on here at this point. So you just make your way up this door and you enter this really creepy little room with bookshelves and art everywhere. It's a really fancy office. And then enter Psycho Mantis, who basically is just floating freak with a gas mask, which also adds to the whole creepiness. It's the whole breathing apparatus, just so cool. So here's a list that I've compiled of some things he does. He will judge your playthrough, how well you can avoid traps and all that. Basically saying, you know, if you're reputable or if you're kind of a scaredy cat, do you save a lot, that kind of thing. He will read your memory card. Mind you, this is 1998, so we had memory cards. I don't think it works anymore in the modern consoles, but he would read your memory card and list off games that you've played. So that was freaky. And not only that, he does this little demonstration. He's like, I will move the controller with the will of my power, something like that. And your controller starts to vibrate. And it's just all this, like, it just keeps adding and adding and adding. And you're like, what the hell's going on? Then the fight starts, and you notice, like, dude, how am I supposed to hit this guy? You know, he's just floating around. You cannot hit him. He's physically unable to be hit. You can't shoot him. You can't do anything. So you start freaking out what's going on. And then after many attempts, the game does not tell you right away. After many failed attempts, you are given one of the coolest twists in video game history, in my opinion, where you are then forced to change controller ports to player 2 so he cannot read your inputs. And then you are then able to beat him by him not being able to read your mind. Also, the dialogue changes in real time. He starts saying, why am I getting hit? So cool. And not only that, there's a really disturbing phase 2 with another character, and he's controlling them, and it's a really kind of graphic thing if you mess up. But not only that, is the brilliant part of this is how you know the story and the song and everything is so good, is because once you have defeated Psycho Mantis, who's clearly psycho, uses his powers for evil. Upon defeating him, he gives you his backstory, why he's like this. And hey, I gotta admit, in that little speech, his dying breath, he makes you feel bad for him. And it's just such a, what did I just experience moment, you know? You have to remember, I was like 9 or 10 years old when this, like when I played it. Up until this point, video games for me were like side scrollers, little pew pew here, and maybe like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, you know, just video game stuff. When I played this game and I'm seeing all this crap happening, you could see how it changed so much for me. I'm playing through a movie. What do you mean? I just went through this crazy fourth wall breaking section, hearing this crazy music that's so iconic, and then I'm feeling for this character who clearly wants me dead. It's so much to think about that I don't even think I can. I don't know. I feel like I can talk about it forever, but it's so iconic. It's so iconic, and there's really no other way to put that. This is coming from a game that is loaded with moments like this. By the way, there's so many more moments like this. So while it does suck that I had to kind of explain, there's like no other way around it. I had to explain what was happening here. I still, even with that knowledge, honestly, it's still worth playing it. You know, it's just such a iconic part in video games. The song is so cool and freaky as hell. It is. I remember playing this for the first time and it was nighttime. So imagine hearing this mind control while all this stuff is happening. Yeah, I was freaked out. The 2 times in my life that I've been genuinely creeped out by a video game like super hard, both times were Metal Gear. Metal Gear Solid 1 and Metal Gear Solid 2 with a certain codec call. So yeah, man, there's a reason it's my favorite game. It's the reason my favorite song in video game history comes from this game. The credit song. It's the reason why it's tattooed on me. Metal Gear Solid, dude. It's just, whoo. Anyways, this is one of those times where people were definitely having an eye on Hideo Kojima. Like, oh, dude, this guy's something else, you know. Also, the voice acting here, everything, dude. It's just fantastic. I love Mantis Him. I love Metal Gear Solid. I will always talk about it as much as I can. But yes, please play this, experience it. Watch people play it. Wait till they get to this section. So cool. So yeah, that is my my list of the spooky vibes. Before I get out of here, I wanted to mention thank you to all the requesters on Patreon, YouTube comments, the suggesters, the voters. Thank you to all the guests. Check out all their content, their channels, their Twitches, all that. Big thank you to Bob and Barn, the composers of Medieval. Check out the interview I did with Andrew Barnabas from the first episode of Composer Chronicles. Just thanks for, you know, hanging out with the VGM Vibes. It's a really fun series, and I will see you in the Christmas themed one. But one last thing before I get out of here is, as previously mentioned, Andrew Barnabas of Bob and Barn has provided a never-before-heard version of the Gargoyle Shop theme for Medieval Remaster, and that'll be playing right here during the credits. So I will see you all later. Thank you so much for everything, and stay spooky.